Good evening, members. Prayers this evening will be said by Lieutenant David Perkins of the Maidstone Salvation Army. But before the prayers, can we remain standing in silence for 1 minute in memory of Mr. Paul Askew, a former member of the Borough Council, who sadly passed away recently. Thank you.
Let us pray together. Dear Almighty God, at the beginning of this meeting, we take time to remember and give thanks for the life and service of Mr. Paul Askew. We thank you for his work and influence in Maidstone and beyond. We pray especially for Paul's loved ones and ask you to comfort them and to reassure them of your great and eternal love. We recognise and give thanks for everyone who gives their time and energy in serving the common good. We give thanks for the hard work and commitment of our mayor and members of this council, and all those within our borough who are working together for the best interests of our community, its residents and visitors. Lord God, may you bless everyone here assembled. May you grant them wisdom to govern amid the conflicting interests and issues of our times. A sense of the welfare and the true needs of our people, following the example of Jesus in compassion for the most vulnerable in our society. A heart for justice and rightness. The ability to work together in harmony even when there is disagreement. And personal peace in their lives and joy in their responsibilities. I pray for the agenda set before them today. Please give an assurance of what would please you and what would benefit those who live and work in and around our community. Almighty God, for all the people of this borough, I pray that you would grant us strength for today and bright hope for tomorrow. Amen.
Please be seated all. Before we commence proceedings, in view of the many public present, may I take this opportunity to advise you that if the fire alarm does sound, please remain seated, and members of the Democratic Services team sitting to my side will assess the situation and give further instructions on the evacuation of the building if necessary. These proceedings will be webcast and recorded by the council, but will anyone else be recording or filming them? I ask so that people at the meeting are aware that this will be happening. Hand over to Councillor, yes, the usual Councillor Mackay. Councillor Mackay, yeah.
I reserve my right, Mr. Mayor, to report.
A dedication. Item 2. I have received apologies for absence from Councillors Higson, Houlihan, Gahili, Middlechaver, Oliver, Springett and Trubinsky. Are there any other apologies for absence? No hands? No. Okay. Agenda 3. Are there any applications for dispensation?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There were no such applications for dispensations, but I would remind members that they all have a dispensation to vote on council tax.
Thank you. Agenda item 4. Are there any disclosures of interest by members? Councillor Cook.
Just for sake of due diligence, Mr. Mayor, I am chairman of Fusion, and there is reference to Fusion in the budget figures, so I'd better declare that as an interest. It's not pecuniary, and I don't consider myself unable to take full part in the debate. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Are there any disclosures by officers?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, on this occasion, and usually there are, and that is as a result of the report on the agenda this evening from the Employment Committee relating to the pay policy statement. So I make that disclosure on behalf of all officers. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that duly noted? Yeah. Agenda item 5. Are there any disclosures of lobbying? I see no hands. Agenda item 6. Is it agreed that the items on the agenda be taken in public as proposed? That's a full agreement. Agenda 7. Are the minutes of the meeting of the Borough Council held on the 3rd of December 2025 agreed as the correct record? That is agreed. Agenda item 8 leads me to my announcements. I realise that we have quite a long agenda, so I won't go into too much detail, but I shall give you some great delights and some great concerns. Over the year so far, I've had the opportunity of going to many schools, care homes, community centres, various meetings, various groups, various businesses, but I have to say that there have been a number of highlights in the last couple of months that I did want to bring to people's attention. Lewes Primary School held an art and culture exhibition in Maidstone Museum. It was so pleasing to be there at that because a former mayor, Councillor Mortimer's grandchild, was there. The former mayor who died some years ago. That child came up to me and actually said, "My dad talked about you. You're a Conservative, aren't you?" And I said, "Oh, well, is that a good thing or a bad?" "Well, he quite likes you." So I thought that was quite a lovely memory. In fact, it drew tears to my eyes, especially I said to him, "Well, you can't be that old. Do you remember much about your grandfather?" And he said, "Yes. We sat round his bed in the hospice as he died." And that really did draw me to tears. Except that was a lovely lad. And Lewes Primary School did an absolutely wonderful job of writing. Every pupil wrote me a letter. And I can tell you, the articulation of all those pupils was to be admired. It was absolutely incredible. And even further put tears in my eyes because they weren't just paragraphs, they weren't just sentences, they were 1 or 2 pages. And actually, people that actually done some research, primary school done some research about what a council does and what a mayoralty involves. And it's so rewarding when I go around to other places and some people haven't got a clue what a mayor is. Some people don't even know what a local council does. In fact, several times I've been accused of being a heavily blinged up rapper. And they seriously didn't know I was a mayor. So when Lewes Primary School go to a lot of trouble and take up a room, the school's room in the museum, and use it so wonderfully, and do a lovely exhibition of art, poetry, writing, and they sang for me. It was an absolutely glorious day. So I hope that every other mayor gets the opportunity of meeting Lewes Primary School because they are a credit to this borough. And as indeed many other primary schools I go to, but that was a particularly fond memory. I went to a spinathon at Mind, for Mind in the Lock Meadow. It's good to see our own borough facilities now being used for some great charity raising activities. A spinathon, if you don't know it, is static bicycles being cycled by dozens of people. They achieved 9,000 miles in one day between them, all for Mind, an exceptionally wonderful charity, an exceptionally wonderful event in a lovely place. Other places I've gone to, several rehabilitation centres have been opened. I won't go into too much detail about them. But the subject of housing constantly comes up after rehabilitation. A number of water issues have been brought to my attention, but then that's hardly surprising. I've met the Hong Kong Nursing and Doctors Association. That consists of hundreds of people now living in Maidstone that work mainly not just at Maidstone Hospital, but several other hospitals in the area. And they have all come out of Hong Kong. It was made particularly obvious to me when this recent Saturday, we had the Chinese New Year celebrations. And there were hundreds of people outside the town hall, absolutely hundreds of all generations, but a lot of people with a Chinese background. I took an opportunity of meeting many of them and speaking to many of them, many of which had fled Hong Kong in the last few years. I've mentioned it before, having been to some schools where there are a number of Hong Kong people. It's painfully obvious that Maidstone's very popular, mainly because most of these people are professional. If they're not in nursing or doctoring, they're in some other form of prestigious profession. So as far as I'm concerned, I welcome them. I was also made an honorary vice president of Maidstone rugby, which was a great privilege to me. And then finally, without going into too much detail amongst the many issues, I had the mayor's quiz on Friday night. We sort of repositioned it, revamped it, and reevaluated the quiz this year. We held it in Sutton Valence School. Obviously, it's in my ward. It was a massive turnout. The whole big school building was full up. Over 300 people, 30 odd teams. And we raised thousands. And it's incredible to think that we can have such a wonderful event. So again, I hope that other mayors can make the most of a good quiz. And certainly Sutton Valence School proved to be a very useful venue for so many teams to attend. I'll leave it on those announcements for the time being. And now I shall actually go into the actual issue that started us off this evening. I shall mention Mr. Paul Askew. Many of us will not know former councillors, but as mayor, I believe we should follow the tradition of this chamber and always remember those that gave public service. Very valued public service, and particularly active public service in this chamber. I know that Paul Askew wasn't just an elected member, he really took his part. One only needs to look at his record to see how many committees he sat on, some of which he was chair or vice chair. This is why I, and I hope other mayors, will always say that we must remember our former councillors. They do public service, they serve this borough. Therefore, I ask people who will know him better to speak. I therefore ask Councillor English to say a few words.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I first met Paul at the very first meeting when Maidstone SDP was a dream in the eyes of certain local activists up at St Michael's Church Hall. We worked together for many years, me in a rather more junior capacity than him. Both before he became a councillor for my own ward of High Street Ward and afterwards on many campaigns. It was a personal pleasure of mine to see through to final fruition one of Paul's most keenly felt campaigns, which was to secure the speed camera in Hale Road, where the 3 young girls were killed tragically. I remember knocking on doors with him and his ward colleague Mike Palmby in some really appalling weather to get residents to sign up the petition for that. Paul had a tremendous track record. He served on pretty much every committee of this council, with a possible exception of planning committee, which like many people, you either love or hate planning. He stayed rather well away from that, but he had a huge commitment to increasing the recreational and biodiversity opportunities of the people of Maidstone, fighting for public open spaces. And also he got very involved in housing. High Street is a ward that produces a tremendous amount of casework, and he and his close ward colleague Mike Palmby did a tremendous amount of casework. We didn't have email in those days, thankfully, but we still got plenty of phone calls, letters and knocks on the door. So he did a tremendous amount of work. He did, of course, relax rather a lot and plan for the future. I remember some memorable evenings in the British Queen, in Mike Palmby, supporting the nighttime economy. One particular evening was a little grim. He'd felt a bit peckish and had visited the Shamrat, a famous restaurant in Maidstone. Was a little perturbed upon leaving to establish a real rat, flat on its back, legs up in the air, who apparently died of eating something it shouldn't. He hoped very much that it hadn't been a meal at the restaurant they just departed, but had caused this rat to expire. So Paul worked incredibly hard. We had some good times, some bad times, and some very narrow escapes. I remember his second re-election, where we had 4 recounts. I think it's a record in the borough's history, and he finally survived by 8 votes to carry on. I felt tremendously privileged to work with him in the days when Maidstone was a much more rough around the edges council. We all get on reasonably well here now. Maidstone in the 80s was a very confrontational, in the trenches, in your face fight. Every meeting was a fight. And Paul was no quitter, and he achieved a great deal for High Street and the residents of High Street. I and Tony, who were privileged to work with him, want to say to his family, thank you for allowing him to work with us and to contribute to the future and the present of Maidstone. And I hope that we continue to mark a legacy of people who have contributed, whatever their political background.
Hear, hear. Well said, Clive. Councillor Harwood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And it is genuinely an honour to say a few words about Paul in front of his family and in front of colleagues. The late 80s and early 90s were a tumultuous time for politics, both nationally, internationally and locally. And throughout what were sometimes some very long meetings and really quite fraught meetings, the thing about Paul is he was always smiling. And that was the thing. He was a kind of Richmond Crompton, this kind of Just William character. I think he was described by an officer colleague who remembered him as a cheeky chappie, and it was, and that was very much his persona. But I think it's really worth reinforcing some of the points that Clive made about how different and how much the council was trench warfare in those days. The council was very, very different. The past genuinely is a different country. For example, Paul chaired Housing Committee and Housing Cases group at different times. And that was in the days when it was pre-transfer, we had our own housing stock. So therefore, the big estates, Shepway, Mangravitt, Parkwood, Ringleston, and so on, Maidstone Council was the beating heart of those communities. And Housing Cases group, where individual residents who had challenges around paying the rent or had issues about the size of the property or whatever, would come into Housing Cases, and they would last all day. And they were really, really involved, and your contact with residents was so great, to really represent them and understand. And that's what Paul was really good at doing. Clive talked about planning, saying that Paul got out of it mostly, but he didn't completely, because in those days there was no such thing as delegations. So if you look at the weekly list of all of the porches and extensions and everything else that come in, they all used to go to area planning committees. So those of us who were on all of the planning committees, and there were a few of us, it was literally week after week after week, you were just in planning committee, and it was every item. So, again, really remarkably involved and totally different. And Clive also referred to, just how radical politics were in the late 90s. I mean, then admittedly the schism was on the left and rather than the right now, with the creation of the SDP and its merger with the Liberals as we were. But it was really interesting because you had things like Margaret Thatcher's speech to the General Assembly of the UN on climate change, which kind of set the world talking and thinking, and that really had a big impact on local politics around that late time in the late 1980s and the things that were done. It was also the time of the community charge or council tax, to take the flip side of Mrs. Thatcher, which wasn't so good, and they were literally riots in the street. So it was very different, but throughout it, Paul kept smiling. Cheers.
Thank you very much. Councillor Rodwell, I understand you wish to say a few words.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know Paul Askew way before my time, but I just want to give a warm welcome to all of you that have come tonight and to be part of this meeting. And I want to acknowledge that it's a really difficult time for you and it's really early days. And, you know, I didn't know Councillor Askew when he was doing all that work in the community. I was an art student messing around in art college, as art students often do. But something really struck me, Vicky, when you first reached out to me, was a childhood memory that you told me about when you were a little girl. You, Michelle, and Elizabeth were folding those campaign newsletters and you were delivering them, you were out delivering them with your dad. And something really struck me as this little cherished memory that you had, that you knew from a very early age that your dad was really committed to the community in which he served, and he was passionate that he wanted to make a difference to the people that lived in his community. And, you know, although most of us here don't remember him, that memory that you have shared sort of resonates with all of us. Because, as we've said, regardless of our political persuasions, we want to be able to have those values and make a difference in the communities where we serve. And so it's such an honour to have you here tonight. And, you know, there is something about loss, and it's a real leveller. And, you know, we're missing that person so much, and everything just feels surreal. And, you know, sometimes that sense of permanence that we have can really shift. But, you know, like Vicky and Michelle and Elizabeth and all of you, you're all going to have these unique memories of him. And you're going to have those collective memories. And as you reminisce together, it will keep Paul very much present in your hearts. And so many of you are here tonight. It's very clear that Councillor Askew, Paul, Dad, Grandad, was very much respected and very much loved. Our warm thoughts to all of you.
Thank you very, very much. I'm afraid now we have to move on to the agenda again. Back to agenda item 9. There are no petitions this evening. Item 10, question and answer session for local residents. I have received notification that Councillor John Britt, Chairman of Lenham Parish Council, wishes to ask a question of the Cabinet Member for Housing and Homelessness. Are you familiar with the setup? Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, members. A recent estimate of the infrastructure costs relating to the Heathlands New Town by KCC put that in the region of £100 million. If, as we've been assured, this is to be bankrolled by a loan from Homes England over and above the contributions from the landowners, how do the Cabinet anticipate that sum will be repaid and by whom? And what is Plan B if the funds don't materialise as expected?
Councillor Wales.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Britt. The overall viability of the Heathlands project was explored through the examination in public for the last local plan review, and that was adopted in March 2024. This process endorsed and validated the overall premise of land value capture to fully fund the infrastructure required for the whole Heathlands project, i.e. the price ultimately paid for the land will reflect the funds required for infrastructure. Whilst the overall profitability of any large project will ebb and flow over its duration, the current position is as it stood through the examination in public. In the event that this were to alter, the site promoters could indeed potentially approach the likes of Homes England or the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government for support under any suitable funding stream that might be available at this time. Such funding streams do exist now, And given the government's commitment to 1.5 million homes in this Parliament, it seems probable that this will remain the case for the medium term as well.
Councillor Britt, do you wish to raise a supplementary question?
Yes, please. Much is made throughout the recently published SPD, as well as the latest edition of Borough Insight, of the great life and advantages to be created through the development of this new town. Can someone explain what benefits, whether financial or otherwise, this development will bring to the existing and mostly rural communities of Lenham, and how will those important aspects be protected and enhanced? Because that element seems to be missing from the current documentation.
For Councillor Wells' purpose, I don't believe that actually originates from the original question, that supplementary question. And in fact, it's not actually a question that should be targeted at the Cabinet Member for Housing either. And therefore, in that respect, whilst it is a pertinent question, I would ask you to take it forward through the relevant ward member to ask the appropriate Cabinet Member. Is that acceptable?
Not really.
Does the legal officer wish to clarify my particular position? I feel it did not come out of the original question. It's being judged that it's not an appropriate supplementary question. So I have suggested a route for you. I have received notification that Mr. Sean Turner wishes to ask a question of the Cabinet Member for Environmental Services and Enforcement.
Good evening, Chairman. Good evening, members. In reference to the corporate strategy Year 2 action plan to explore differential car charging tariffs within Maidstone Borough car parks, Maidstone Borough Council's Environmental Information Regulation response, reference EIR 0347, confirms that the Council holds no local emissions reporting prior to the 2019 Climate Emergency Declaration, and the most recent air quality annual status reports confirms that the borough is compliant with statutory air quality objectives outside the Upper Stone Street hotspot. Given there is no statutory requirement or national mandate requiring the introduction of ultra-low emission parking tariffs, on what specific evidential and statutory basis is the Cabinet exploring the feasibility of differential parking charges based on vehicle type within this borough?
Councillor English.
I could give a Councillor Jonathan Pearlstar answer to this and just say we aren't. I can understand how you might have misinterpreted this, Sean, and thank you very much for the question. However, the Borough Council is not currently looking at differential charging on the basis of emissions. We have done some very preliminary work, and I stress very preliminary work, in relation to potential differential charging by vehicle weight, which is an entirely different issue. And the reason we have indicated that we might look at this, albeit not immediately, is because a number of local authorities throughout the country, defining the country widely as to include Wales, have gone down this path. However, I anticipate that we will await the outcome of the initial councils that have gone down this path, judge how effective it has been before we commit to doing anything. I'm sure you're aware that the early adopters with a particular approach are not always the people who benefit most from adopting such a situation. And if there are any mistakes to be made, we prefer someone else to make them. I have to be honest about that. So it is not an issue that is likely to trouble people in the next year or so. So what I would say is, in addition to that, the council parking services staff, of whom there are a limited number, are concentrating mostly on operational issues, of which more and more are generated over the period of time, and also looking at the anticipated impact of a number of changes which the government has already indicated will take place, including the potential introduction of regulations around pavement parking. We anticipate that this will give us some challenges along with providing some potential new tools. So any officer time I have available will be prioritised to looking at those immediate issues as to how we benefit the people of Maidstone. Obviously, we'll take on board lessons learned in terms of differential parking around the country, but the priority at the moment will be dealing with legislative changes being implemented and administrative changes being implemented by the government across the country, which will impact on Kent and Maidstone. I hope that helps.
Thank you, Councillor English. Do you wish to raise a supplementary question?
I do not. Thank you.
Thank you. That was obviously a very satisfactory and well articulated verdict. Thank you, Councillor English. I have received notification from Ms. Kate Hammond, wishes to ask a question of the Cabinet Member for Housing and Homelessness, but unfortunately I have subsequently learned that she is stuck on a train. So therefore, I will be asking that question, for which Councillor Wales will respond. The Council and Homes England have outlined their intention to submit an outline planning application for Heathlands in the autumn. The reality remains that most of the land in Phase 1 is still not secured, and landowners continue to refuse to sell or even engage with the promoters' agents. Given that this fundamental obstacle has been clear for years, is the Council and Homes England now prepared to admit that compulsory purchase powers are the only viable route left to keep the Heathlands project alive? Councillor Wales.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you in your absence to Mr. Hammond. Homes England, as co-promoter for Heathlands, are leading on and undertaking the more significant land acquisitions. Accordingly, it would not be appropriate for the Council to comment on the imminence or otherwise of commercial transactions between two third parties. However, it is apparent that Homes England remain fully committed to the Heathlands project and will be taking their own advice to finalise their strategy to achieve their desired land assembly outcomes.
Thank you. Councillor Wales, can you switch your microphone off? Thank you. Sit up. Yeah. I've received notification that Councillor Povey wishes to ask a question of the Cabinet Member. Oh, sorry. Obviously, really. Sorry. Yeah. I've received notification that Mr. Steve Healy wishes to ask a question of the Cabinet Member for Corporate Resources. He will be coming in by online.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hopefully you can hear me. you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, I'll proceed with my question. At its meeting on the 22nd of January 2025, Cabinet approved an additional £2.5 million for the Heathlands project, bringing total public spending or funding to £8 million. The latest budget monitoring report estimates a full year spend of 1.42 million in 2025-26, yet the capital programme for 26-27 to 30-31 presented this evening makes no obvious provision for the remaining £1 million. Given this, can the council confirm whether the outstanding £1 million is still required for the Heathlands project, or whether it can now be redirected to more pressing investment priorities for Maidstone's residents?
Councillor Summerskill.
Thank you, Mr. Healy, for that question. The total project expenditure by Maidstone Borough Council up to the end of 2025, i.e. third quarter of this financial year, is approximately 2.5 million, of which approximately half relates to the current financial year and the rest to last year's. The remaining budget of 1.5 million available to the council will be fully utilised as the planning and promotion of Heathlands progresses to outline planning application submission in the next financial year, taking the council expenditure to 4 million for promotion and planning costs on the project. This expenditure by the council will be broadly matched by Homes England. So for the avoidance of doubt, the remaining 1.5 million required by the council for 2026-27 has already been set aside in the previous capital programme, which was approved just over 12 months ago. There is no outstanding £1 million to be redirected.
You have the right to a supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Slightly confused because that doesn't feature on the capital programme budget book, but anyway, I'll leave that point aside. Can the council tonight provide some assurance that no further funding beyond the £4 million for Maidstone and the £8 million overall with Homes England that's been ploughed into Heathlands will be required going into this project up to planning application stage? And if that didn't quite make any sense, is any more money required to go into this project before it's put in front of the planning committee?
That is a legitimate question.
Thank you.
Thank you. The answer is no.
We now move on. Questions from members. I have received notification that Councillor Houlihan wishes to ask a question of the Cabinet Member for Housing and Homelessness. As Councillor Houlihan is unable to be present at the meeting, I have agreed to ask this question on his behalf. With regards to the potential Heathlands development, MBC are leaving all major issues to an outline application whereby they will be the applicant. Can MBC sign a Section 106 legal agreement with itself or refuse its own planning application? Councillor White.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm reminded of waiting for a bus in Maidstone. You wait a month for a question to arrive and you get three all at once. So, and thank you for the question to Councillor Houlihan, and sorry to hear of your reason for your not being here. From a co-promoter perspective, whilst not confirmed, the most likely scenario is that the eventual outline planning application will be made by Homes England, not by the council, as their role will be much greater than that of the council as the project transitions to the delivery phase. This would make matters more straightforward in terms of securing the required infrastructure contributions through a Section 106 agreement. But to answer the question as specifically as I can, the council could not enter a Section 106 with itself, were it the applicant, but it could achieve the same outcomes by way of memorandum of understanding. And this type of agreement has been used to secure infrastructure on previous council applications. Furthermore, were the council to be the applicant on this planning application, the local planning authority arm of the council could indeed refuse it if it was so minded. But for the avoidance of doubt, our understanding at this stage is the outline planning application will indeed be made by Homes England, who would then enter into a Section 106 agreement with the local planning authority in the event of a resolution to grant planning permission being made by that said committee.
Thank you, Councillor Wales. A written version of that answer will be sent to Councillor Hooner. I've received notification that Councillor Povey wishes to ask a question of the Cabinet Member for Planning, Policy and Management.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Since the inspector
Stand.
Since the inspector described the viability of Heathlands SPD as marginal at best during the local plan review, what has the SPD achieved in terms of underpinning the viability?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Povey, for that question. I think it has been explained in some of the earlier questions. The matter of viability was discussed at the hearing for the local plan review. The purpose of the supplementary planning document is to embellish or expand or elaborate on that policy framework that was created by the local plan review document that was approved by an inspector. This has been explained to the stakeholder group on a number of occasions, and it was also covered in some detail in the report to Cabinet in respect of the adoption of the Heathlands SPD. So I think this is the critical point, is that the supplementary planning document cannot create policy. It can only respond to the policy framework that was set by the inspector within the development document, in this case, the local plan review. Where there is a bearing on viability is that the viability of the project cannot be made more financially burdensome by policies within the supplementary planning document. And I think that's a really critical point, that essentially the supplementary planning document cannot create big new expensive policies. All it can do is respond to that framework that was set by the inspector, who agreed that the scheme was viable, albeit in his own words, that it was quite a slender in some places. So I think from the local planning authority perspective, I think that's all I can say, is that it comes back to what an SPD can do. Thank you.
Councillor Povey, do you wish to ask a supplementary question of the Cabinet Member of Planning, Policy and Management arising out of your original question?
I do, thank you.
Reply.
What steps is the Cabinet taking to identify, track, maintain, mitigate and progress all dependencies, risks and issues in connection with the Heathlands prior to an outline planning application?
Do you want to repeat? Yeah. On advice, your question refers to the outline planning which wasn't part of your first question. Item 12. With the agreement of group leaders already, item 12 has been withdrawn from the agenda. Item 13, page 11. I call upon Councillor Russell to present the annual report of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee and to move that it be noted.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is the second year that I've been chairman of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and I'm pleased to present this annual report to Council. This year, we've carried out the committee's pre-decision scrutiny function 12 times, and we've carried out our scrutiny function work programme by carrying out 3 reviews into the still charging schedule, empty properties, and most recently concluding our work into the level of trust between the council and the public. Finally, we have carried out our decision scrutiny function with 2 call-ins this year, one on the refurbishment of Maidstone House, and the second being the part development of Medway Street Car Park. As chairman, I'd like to thank all officers and members and external participants that have helped us follow our lines of inquiry, and all committee members that have embraced the different important scrutiny nature of the committee work that we conduct on behalf of residents throughout this year, and those who have put in extra time to attend working group meetings, and I commend the report to Council. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Councillor Russell. Is that seconded? Councillor Clark, thank you. Cook, Clark here. Good. Yeah. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak on that matter? No, therefore, the annual report of the Overview Committee is noted. Agenda item 14. I call upon Councillor Summerskill to move the recommendations of the Cabinet Council Tax Reduction Scheme 2026-27. Recommendations on page 20.
Thank you, Mayor. This report is some detail is a scheme to offer a maximum 100% council tax support to certain qualifying residents and certain percentage and threshold changes. I shall go into some detail, but try not to get too much into the detail. Historically, council tax reduction scheme here has been annually at 80%, which means that certain residents still have to pay 20% of the council tax. Maidstone Borough Council continues to be responsible for designing and approving the scheme, and in doing so, it consults with the main council tax preceptors, who are KCC, Kent Police, and Kent Medway Fire and Rescue. These precepts depend on the amount of council tax collected, so the cost of council tax reduction scheme is shared by the council and the preceptors. As a share in the cost of the scheme, preceptors have a strong interest in managing the CTRS, and so until last year, preceptors KCC paid each district council a grant for administering the CTRS, which for Maidstone Borough Council was £177,000. But this was removed last year and was not paid to Maidstone Borough Council. This grant was removed from all the sites. So each year we are required to review our council tax reduction scheme in-house, and a new authority could change anything we've changed. And in fact, we could change it again next year. So this is purely for the forthcoming year. It's a regressive tax, council tax. It falls proportionally more heavily on lower income households. And the poorest fifth of households spend 5% of their gross income on council tax, which is up from 3% in 20 years ago. The poorest fifth of households spend more than 3 times as much of their income on council tax as the richest fifth families do. The feature of council tax is highly relevant for Maidstone Borough Council because one of the council's key strategic objectives, this council, is to build resilient communities in which the social and economic challenges of poverty are addressed. This CTRS reduction offers the council an opportunity to contribute directly towards the achievement of this objective and to mitigate poverty. Although many councils in the South East offer 100% council tax reduction, historically Kent has not seen any authorities to do this. This is likely to be related to the grants that were provided by Kent County Council described earlier and have since last year been removed. But of this year, 5 Kent authorities are now introducing 100% council tax reduction scheme and possibly a 6th with Thanet voting tomorrow. So the detail of the costs are all inside there. We had a public consultation on this matter. The results of the public consultation were to go for 100% council tax reduction, the option of 90% council tax reduction, and remaining at 80% with the other two options. The detail is there in section 4 about the consultation results, which are also in the appendix. And we are proceeding to propose the 100% council tax reduction. One of the impacts of this change in council tax reduction is the collection rate is far more of a input for the council employees on collecting the small amount of 20% that remained for council tax people. The revenues team will have to deal with fewer time-consuming, difficult and legal collections. This will be an unforeseen benefit in chasing other council tax people who aren't paying. So I can recommend the detail to the councillors. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that seconded? Councillor Jeffrey.
I second it. Can I reserve my right?
You can say a few words if you wish, yes.
Okay, I'll speak now. So I'm really pleased that we're able to do this. It obviously protects those on the lowest incomes. We are still in a cost of living crisis. I can't see that happening anytime soon. And as Councillor Summersgill mentioned, the cost of collection is huge. And of course, as the papers kind of say, council tax benefit was taken out in 2013 and not replaced fully. So people are still paying, have been paying council tax out of benefits that don't provide for it. So I'm really pleased that we're able to do this, and I'd also quite like a named vote if that's possible. If some people would like to stand up. Thank you. I think I've got my 5. Thanks.
Okay, fine. Right, I can see other people wish to speak on the issue. First and foremost, Councillor Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The 100% council tax reduction scheme for the poorest residents is admirable. There is already an existing council tax reduction scheme of 80% in place, so this decision will look to raise this. I am concerned, however, about the impact on the other authorities. This decision by Maidstone has reduced the Kent County Council available budget by £1 million when they provide adult social care, support for children in care, educational budgets for schools and highways improvements. I can see the argument that they've forgone their own budget during their own budget decisions. However, the decision will also cost the police £163,000 at a time when we've never needed local policing more, and Kent Fire and Rescue nearly £60,000. And they don't get any decision in this. They'll need to respond by cutting services to accommodate. We're also, as the Cabinet member said, not the only district authority in Kent that are looking to do this. 5 to 6 others he mentioned. So we do need to be cognizant that this budgetary impact from all district choices will be magnified for the other precepting authorities, and not forgetting for our very local parish councils.
Councillor Forecast.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I opposed this at committee, so I think it's right that I stand here and stand by my position. As I said on that evening, whenever it was a couple of months ago, while I fully recognise the importance of protecting the vulnerable in the borough, we must also be honest with residents about the financial realities we face. Welfare spending in this country is totally out of control. For most families, the tax burden and cost of living pressures are already crippling, yet now we're asking those who are employed and doing the right thing by going to work to pay even more in tax. We can't keep treating them like cash cows. Extending the council reduction scheme from 80% to 100% for those who are not working would mean more households contribute absolutely nothing towards the local services that we all rely on. This does not encourage people to work, as the papers state, or even to look for employment. Instead, it makes those who are waking up early every morning ask themselves, what is the point in doing this? This policy undoubtedly discourages hard graft, and it's imperative we do not undermine the incentive to enter employment, particularly when many working households just above the eligibility threshold receive no such relief themselves. The argument that it's too hard to collect the small contribution we are asking for is not acceptable reason to proceed with this scheme. Just because some people do not comply does not mean we should reward that behaviour. We don't remove all speed limits because some people speed. Equally, just because something is hard does not mean we should not bother trying. At a time when families across our borough are dealing with higher taxes, rising inflation and continued cost of living pressures, I do not believe it is right to ask those who are working, often in low-paid jobs themselves, to shoulder an even greater burden. For those reasons, I will not be supporting this. Thank you.
Councillor Harper.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As a lifelong socialist, I came into public life to actually help people and every communities live decent lives. So I'm really pleased to see this council adopting this policy. What? Oh, I'll put it, it's got the light. It's, yeah, unfortunate for some. Right, I better start again then. Sorry about that. I was just going to say, as a lifelong socialist, helping people to improve their lives and using public resources to do that in a community-wide basis is the type of thing which brought me into public life when I first went onto a council back in 1986, a long time ago. So I'm really pleased to see that Maidstone Council is now adopting this policy. I think it will, as the leader pointed out, help support the poorest in our community, which surely is one of our prime duties to do as an authority. So I, for myself and for my team, are happy to support this policy. I think it's probably overdue, and it's really good to be doing.
Councillor Cannon.
Thank you. I'll repeat the point that I made in committee on this, and it's in the documents on page 29 and 30. The consultees highlight that the impact on taxpayers wasn't put inside the consultation. So in the committee, I said that we should go out to consultation again because of two errors. Partly these that have been raised by the consultees, not being transparent and being clear with the electorate who've been consulted, and then also the composition of the consultees. I believe, I can't remember the exact amount from the top of my head, but in the committee I remember seeing that the consultees were mainly beneficiaries of this change opposed to the working population. And so that's why I wanted a new consultation, so that we were acting on sensible information and true information. And that's why I won't be supporting this.
Councillor English.
When Kent County Council withdrew the grant to support council tax collection, it was pointed out to them by other local authorities that the impact on their own council tax collection might be more than the money they saved. They didn't listen. So therefore, I think local authorities other than KCC should look at what is best for the residents of Maidstone, which is what we are doing, because KCC didn't look at what was best for Kent. Now, a few remarks have been made. We've had the standard, let's smear a few welfare recipients. Actually, 40% of welfare benefits in this country are out of control because employers pay such low wages that the government has to effectively subsidise the payroll. We don't hear a lot about that from the political right. In practice, you cannot disassociate the likelihood of collecting revenue from an enforcement function from that function. It is quite legitimate to consider what level of arrears and what level of income one would get from pursuing a particular strategy. We all know that asking the poorest in our community to contribute to a tax they can barely afford to pay or cannot afford to pay is not going to be efficient administratively or in revenue collection. We have chosen not just the compassionate path, but the efficient path. And it is good in local government or anywhere else when the two coincide, and they do coincide here. And that is what we are going, I hope, to do. And I'm proud to be supporting this measure. You don't have to be a lifelong socialist, no offence, Paul, to believe in fairness, justice and equality.
Councillor Gooch.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I note in paragraph 2.24 that it will allow our service, our staff, to focus on more productive work and potentially to improve collection overall. Can I be assured that there will be a report at the end of the new financial year to actually prove that work has been more productive and that actually there has been an improvement in the collection rate overall? Can I have that reassurance, please? Thank you.
Yeah, I am assured that that will be reported as part of the general budget reporting. And I'm fairly sure it will also finish up at audit as well. Councillor Cleater.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I speak as someone who actually works with that group of people when I was employed at KCC. Today, I accompanied, through my current job, someone who had my taxes to help those get back on their feet, because when I was a single mum, I struggled as well. And now we're being asked to support this for 1 year. My group will be supporting this, and I'm glad we're having a named vote because the public can see who is and who isn't supporting it.
Councillor Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm a pensioner too, Maureen, and I pay my taxes. And I'm all in favour of giving a hand up to those people that are in need. And I think our tax systems and the rates that we pay needs to be fair, accountable, and transparent. What concerns me about this proposal is that we have a system that works at the moment, is already very generous. I applaud the efforts to make it a little more generous by in terms of the proposal. But I am concerned, Mr. Mayor, about the impact on the other precept companies. Not so much KCC, and I agree with Maureen about the leader of KCC. I do wonder who's on TikTok, Facebook more, her or our leader. But we've got the issue of the police, and we have the issue of the Kent Fire and Rescue. The police, we are taking away from them £163,000. Now, that £163,000 in terms will need to be made up from other boroughs and districts that are not doing what we're doing, or potentially maybe the police will look at their own budgets and say, well, that 163,000 needs to be saved directly from policing in Maidstone districts. In which case, if that were the case, what we're being asked to vote for here is reduced policing through our borough, and that would be wrong. We're also voting to reduce potential fire and emergency services by £60,000. That, again, will need to be made up. If it's not coming from us by what we're doing, we are requiring other districts and boroughs that are not acting similarly to us to effectively subsidise the actions that we are seeking to take this evening. I think that's unfair. I think what is fair is that all people in a certain situation are treated with equality and dignity. And I think the existing generous system that we have for this is more than adequate to do that. So I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, I will not be voting to support this.
Councillor Couch.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had a feeling that Councillor Cleaser was going to stand up ahead of me and say things in much better words, but I just wanted to say really quickly that I really dislike the comments that were made earlier, and I think they're quite dangerous to say that it's harder working people that are going to be paying for this. We're talking about the people here who can't work. Any one of us could next week be in a car accident, wake up with a degenerative disease, could go through rounds of chemo, could become a carer for anyone of your family who are going through similar things and therefore can't work. And it makes absolutely no sense to me for the council to distribute benefits to those people, to then take them, spend money to take them straight back off of them in council tax. Thank you.
Councillor Mackay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be very brief. I can't believe for a moment that the actions being taken by this council tonight would deprive the police of over £100,000 in one financial year and the fire brigade £60,000. But what I do know is spending more money on a consultation that was proposed, a further consultation, will be a further waste of money. I stood to become a councillor so I can improve people's lives. I welcome this move. It is right and it is just. I will leave it there.
And to finish, Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to sort of give a little bit of a sort of mathematical thought on this. We're talking about collecting from people 20% from some of the poorest people. When we pursue outstanding council tax, it costs as much to go after someone that only pays 20% as it does someone that pays 100%. And the papers and the report that we get at the end of the year, which will give us more information about this, is essentially saying this is a theoretical amount of money that we're talking about for the 20%, because it isn't just a pot of money, it's a pot of money with the additional cost of pursuing it, chasing it, paying legal costs. And the alternative is to look at it, and in front of you, you've got 20% here, you've got 100% there, and there are people not paying across the board. So if we look at it and we say, let's focus our efforts on the people that are not paying 100%, if anyone in business, if you're going after a market, you go for the 100% market, not the 20% market, because the costs to the business would be the same whether your outcome is 20% or 100%. So I just wanted to give that as a little bit of a thought when you're looking at these numbers, because there's a level of theory when it comes to 20%. That's not what we would actually be gaining for the council. Thank you.
Thank you. On the basis of the fact that 5 members have already called for a named vote, I'm now going to ask officers to take the vote.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. So you're voting on the recommendations that are set out on page 20 of your agenda. I'm going to ask each councillor in turn whether you're voting for, against or abstaining. So can we start please with Councillor Barwick?
Definitely for.
Councillor Burke?
Definitely against.
Councillor Cannon?
Against.
Councillor Clark?
For.
Councillor Cleater? For. Councillor Coates?
For. For.
Councillor Cook?
Against.
Councillor Cooch? For. Councillor Dawes? For. And Councillor English?
For.
Councillor Field?
For.
Councillor Forecast? Councillor Fort?
Abstain.
Councillor Gooch?
For.
Councillor Greenan? For. Councillor Harper?
For.
Councillor Harwood?
For.
Councillor Jeffrey?
For.
Councillor Jenkins Baldock?
For.
Councillor Jones?
For.
Councillor Cadker?
For.
Councillor Mackay?
For.
Councillor Millam? For. Councillor David Nagy?
For.
Councillor Mark Nagy?
For.
Councillor Parfitt?
Abstain.
Councillor Perry?
Abstain.
Councillor Povey?
Against.
Councillor Reardon?
Against.
Councillor Rodwell?
For.
Councillor Round?
Abstain.
Councillor Russell?
Abstain.
Councillor Spooner?
Abstain.
Councillor Summerskill?
For.
Councillor Sweetman?
For.
Councillor Mike Thompson?
For.
Sorry, Councillor Stephen Thompson?
For.
Councillor Wales?
For.
Councillor Wilby?
For.
Councillor Dan Wilkinson?
For.
And Councillor Joe Wilkinson?
For.
Thank you.
I'll just let the officers do the tally.
So members, I'm sure you were totting things up as we were going through, but I can confirm that the vote was 34, so 30 votes for, 6 against and 6 abstentions, which means that the recommendations are approved. Thank you.
I now move on to agenda item 15. I call upon Councillor English to move the recommendation of the Democracy and General Purposes Committee. Appointment of independent person, recommendation as per page 129.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. After exhaustive discussions and actually a contested election at the Democracy and General Purposes Committee, I'm delighted to move the recommendation of the committee that Jonathan Wall be appointed to the role of independent person on the Independent Remuneration Panel.
Yes, is it seconded? Councillor Thompson. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak? Councillor Thompson, you have the right.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would simply like to say that it was a genuine joy to have a contested election. It was an excellent evening. We were kept busy. There was a long conversation, and our sincere thanks need to go to a plural number of members of the public who put themselves forward for the service of the borough. It's very much appreciated, and I hope that it sets a path for wider community engagement to represent residents and support the work of this council in the future. Thank you.
Is the recommendation agreed? Thank you. Agenda item 16. I call upon Councillor Jeffrey to move the recommendation of the Employment Committee Pay Policy Statement 2026. Recommendation on page 132.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report is the pay policy statement that has to be agreed by full council for publication by the end of March. The pay policy statement sets out the main aspects of the remuneration strategy for the council. The council has to meet the target to publish, has met the target to publish. Piece of paper a bit closer. There we go. Has met the target to publish a pay policy statement in previous years, and the statement has been updated to reflect the changes that have happened during the year. So I move that the proposed pay policy statement set out in Appendix 1 be agreed prior to publication.
Thank you. Is that seconded? Councillor Cleater. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak? No? Are the recommendations agreed? They are agreed. Agenda item 18. Before I call upon Councillor Jeffrey to move the recommendation of the Cabinet relating to medium-term financial strategy and budget proposals 26 to
17.
Oh, sorry. Right. I'm too enthusiastic. I should never have my clock here. I call upon Councillor Jeffrey to move the recommendations of Cabinet Corporate Strategy Year 2 Action Plan and Key Performance Indicators. Recommendations, page 161.
Thank you. I'll keep this brief. What you have before you is the administration's proposed Year 2 Action Plan. This is based on our corporate strategy and builds upon the actions of the past 12 months. As we are aware, our decision-making powers are likely to be curtailed later this year, so we want to push ahead and get as many decisions as we can over the line before the Section 24 notice arrives, probably in October. The Year 2 plan includes, well, LGR, local government reorganisation, as you'd expect. We've got some more money for river restoration. We've got more on nature recovery and climate action. We've got a community cohesion and safety grant scheme. We've got town centre projects, including Earl Street, delivery of the outcome of the community governance review, exploring a new bridge across the Medway, creative and leisure provision, including All Saints, more support for the business improvement district, addressing period poverty, opening the housing revenue account if we need to, and we're going to, as I'll probably give a very similar speech in July, I think it is, but we will take these through the packs as we've done because we really do want input into the plans. So lots to do, and I move the recommendations on, I think it's page 161.
Is that seconded? Councillor English, you have the right.
In the interest of expediting business, I shall waive my right.
Okay, so anyone else wishing to speak? I've already got Councillor Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We don't have long left as an authority. We have existing projects that have previously received cross-party support, and we must focus on delivering these well. The 1,000 affordable housing for local people that our Conservative administration started as a project is supremely ambitious for a local authority. It mustn't be allowed to fade into the background as we progress towards a unitary authority. This should be the focus, the purchasing of properties for temporary accommodation has been an excellent piece of work, and the results of these can be seen in the budget later. I'm not sure that we should deviate from our core work, however noble a cause. Let's do the basics well, as our days are few, but the needs are great. You know that we think the Maidstone housework is an absolute travesty of a waste of taxpayers' money, and I can see from your plan that it's still included. I feel certain that the large bill of £7.3 million will be more now. It's been nearly a year since we've heard of that amount, and construction costs and labour costs haven't reduced in this time. As I've said before, though, as you know, these are your choices. Precious little of these choices are for rural residents, I know. And finally, I did spot nestled in amongst the items the proposal for the differential charging in our car parks. So I was interested to hear the earlier comment by Councillor English. It is in there. Because I asked about this in committee, and the leader did answer that it was one of the things it could be was to charge people more with polluting cars more. So I would be interested to see about that. I'm fundamentally opposed to that. It will once again penalise rural residents, the only residents that have to use their cars to get to Maidstone, or indeed people that can't afford newer or electric cars. Let's not do this. And I'm thinking that Councillor English is saying he isn't going to. So why don't you just say you've explored it in concept, but that you won't take it any further? Or perhaps say that now. But on the basis of these would not be my choices, I cannot vote for this strategy. Thank you.
Councillor Povey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, I bring apologies from Councillor Houlihan, but I did have a chat with him today, and he was keen for me to seek a bit of clarity around corporate property acquisitions. What's exactly what is that, and what's the objective? Thank you.
Councillor Harper.
On behalf of the independent group, we will be supporting this. We have some reservations on a couple of items, but we believe the administration needs to push ahead during our last period where we can make sort of unilateral decisions. As you said before, the Section 24 notice comes in. So I'll just urge everybody here and all our officers to work really hard to get all this stuff across the line by 1st of October, whatever date we're going to have sprung on us. Thank you.
Councillor Wales.
Just to pick up on Councillor Russell's point, the administration has absolutely no intention of slowing down on the council house building programme. The government expects on the two biggest sites we've got to give us permission to go ahead and build them because they're too tall and post-Grenfell. They're going to be taking a lot more care. Oh, stereo, aren't you lucky? Taking a lot more care. It's coming out in both my ears as well. Yeah, stop. I've lost my thread now. But yes, because post-Grenfell, we have to make sure those buildings are safe, obviously. And that will take us this year probably up, well, 26, 27, we'll be getting on for 30–40% of the total. We've only got 148 properties of the 1,000 left to identify. And these will come quite easily, I feel, through windfall in the remaining years. Bring on tonight.
Thank you. I see no more hands. Councillor Jeffrey.
Yeah, just a quick right to reply. As Councillor Wells said, we've got identified 852, isn't it, properties. So we are absolutely steaming ahead on affordable homes, and you have our the administration's absolute assurance that we are behind this 100%. Just quickly to respond to Councillor Povey's question on corporate property acquisitions. Yeah, from time to time, if stuff comes up, we will look at it and potentially buy it. We do have a corporate property portfolio, and it earns us money and means we can do more stuff as a result. So it is fairly ad hoc depending on what comes up for sale, but we do make investments.
On that basis, I'll ask, are the recommendations agreed? Not a consensus. Do we wish to take a vote? Okay, let's have a hand vote. Not named, just stick up hands. Are the recommendations agreed? That's 4. Those against? Abstentions? Therefore, it is carried. Right, I'll get back to it. Too many long days and another long one tomorrow. Anyway, agenda item 18. Before I call upon Councillor Jeffrey to make the recommendations of Cabinet relating to medium-term financial strategy and budget proposals, I would remind members as a consequence of the Local Authorities Standing Orders England Amendment Regulations 2014, there will need to be a recorded vote on any decision relating to the budget or council tax setting. This will enable people to see how their councillors voted not only on budget motions, but also on any amendments proposed at the meeting. Also, as members are aware, there are 2 amendments to the budget this evening, and they are included in the budget amendment pack with an index for ease of reference. The pack has been circulated. Briefing notes are included in the pack with schedules detailing the impact of each amendment on the proposed budget. I now call upon Councillor Jeffrey to move the recommendations of the Cabinet relating to the medium-term financial strategy and budget proposals 2026-27, recommendations on pages 181 to 183. Councillor Jeffrey, you may speak for up to 10 minutes.
10 minutes, yeah. It's budget time. So this budget supports year 2 of our corporate strategy and our year 2 action plan, which we've just agreed. The budget proposals have been considered by the PACS, Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and the Cabinet. I think this is the last of 6 outings. It feels like more. Earlier this evening, we also agreed our pay policy, the new council tax reduction scheme, and obviously, so the year 2 action plan. All of these are vital components to the budget. There are a whole set of recommendations on the budget, 19 of them, I think, for the coming year and for the MTFS. And as I think we've heard, we have to do recorded votes. I'm assuming we don't have to do 19 recorded votes unless everybody wants to. No, I can't see any enthusiasm for that. Strange, isn't it? So the core MTFS scenario has a number of assumptions, including an increase in council tax by the maximum possible within the referendum threshold, projections based on this alongside the growth and savings proposal, plus the impact of the local government finance settlement, give a balanced budget for 26-27. Appendix A is the budget book. The detail is in there. The projections in the MTFS go forward 5 years, probably beyond the life of the council. And as you will have seen, those years are bumpy, but they are manageable. The overall impact is an additional £9 or 3% increase for Band D council taxpayers, 17 pence per week, or if you prefer, 2 cups of coffee a year. We account for just 12.4% of the overall Band D council tax of £2,500. And as we know, we are protecting the lowest income people in the borough alongside that. So I don't like council tax. It is regressive, but it is what we have to levy. I don't like raising it either, but the impact of not doing so is not just felt in the coming year, but in every following year too. So not raising council tax simply damages the long-term financial stability of the council. And as you can see from the MTFS, there are challenges ahead. Also to note that if we become part of the new council in West Kent, council tax will be equalised across the area, and Band D will fall by about £51, which will be fun. The budget we are proposing is balanced. In Appendix A, the Section 25 reports from our 151 officer, the amazing Mr. Green. Where is he? Oh, there he is. On the robustness, this is on the robustness of the estimates made for the purposes of budget calculations and the adequacy of the proposed financial reserves. I did obviously nick those words. Mr. Green gives the budget a thumbs up, which is very welcome. If any of you like horror stories, go and have a look at the Section 25 report for Kent County Council. I think they mention existential risk, don't they? Yeah, fun. Two specifics to highlight in the budget: transfer of reserves for the Housing Investment Fund of £8 million over 2 years, and a provision for £300,000 for local government reorganisation relating to Maidstone's costs. In addition, to support our Year 2 action plan, we have reviewed earmarked reserves and freed some up to spend in our borough. And I'd rather Maidstone residents benefited from Maidstone money than, Tunbridge Wells, Sevenoaks or Tunbridge and Malling. I want it to be spent here. This means we have some additional money for economic development. We are proposing £500,000 to be provided to the rural areas. And that £1 million is focused on reducing poverty in the town centre. We have seen recent data on child poverty in the centre of the town, and it is shocking. While it has been primarily created by the use of, office conversions to temporary accommodation by the councils, the dire levels of property need to be urgently addressed, and clearly that will help with the child benefit cap being released. It's disappointing that some of our local MPs voted against that. 400,000 kids coming out of poverty is a good thing. So in terms of the £1 million for the town centre, we are going to do a mini Pride in Place, i.e. work with residents on what they feel they need. While I'm on temporary accommodation, Councillor Harper's question will be about that, or one of them at least. We can't see the future for certain, but the excellent work of the housing team and Councillor Wales has led to a substantial reduction and significant savings. This work has been recognised nationally. Last year there were nearly 300 families in temporary accommodation. Currently there are just over 200. In addition to the economic development funding, we propose to reallocate reserves for funds for major works on council assets, making sure that we hand stuff over in a reasonable state. Lock Meadow improvements, rural developments. Keep hearing we don't put enough in the rural, another 160 going in there, alongside the 500 I just mentioned. A healthy living centre, which I think Councillor Cook may have flagged earlier today. And then on the capital programme, Quality Homes for Life, absolutely. The 140 is still there. New park at Maidstone East, GRT site, public realm and greening in Earl Street, a new river bridge as well. So I hope you will support these proposals, and I move the recommendations, all 19 of them together, per the papers. Thank you.
Is that seconded? Councillor English, you have a right.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to reserve my right to speak later in the debate.
Okay, we'll probably come back to you. Councillor Harper, you wanted to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Stuart. I had written down temporary accommodation,
But I was going to say I'm pleased to see the work we're doing as a council in terms of addressing the issue. And I just hope that over the next year and further, we can bring temporary accommodation down as we provide more of our housing affordable homes. This year, my group's not moving any amendments. Last year, I think you'll remember, we moved 4 amendments and they scored between 4 and 20 votes. So we thought this year we wouldn't repeat the same exercise. Our big concern, and I mentioned it on the previous thing, is about getting everything across the line by the 1st of October. And I know from discussions with the administration and the chief executive that everybody here is committed to that. So that has to be, and picking up something Councillor Russell said, our prime objective is to get all of this across the line in the next few months so that we can actually deliver this for our residents. The reserves, I think we will need to probably give further consideration over the next few months. They are still fairly highly uncommitted fund of £16.5 million. And like Councillor Jeffrey, I don't want to necessarily see Maidstone's residents' money handed over to another authority. I want our £16 million spent on Maidstone residents. The housing revenue account, when we set it up, we do need to make sure there's enough money in there to fund 1,000 houses at the social housing level. So I suspect we may need to do some adjustments later in the year as we bring that forward. And then you would not expect me to miss one opportunity to raise one of my hobby horses, which is the leisure centre. And I know I spoke to Kimmy earlier, and I know Kimmy was telling me that you were running a book that I would bring that up, so I don't want to disappoint. Yes, I'd like us, if we could do, over the course of the next year, perhaps, bring some of that work forward so that we can try to get something across the hurdle by the Section 24 notice. And my one element of, I suppose, doubt in terms of deliverability of the capital project, the capital programme, is around the new bridge. I think it'd be good if we could get an additional footbridge or cycle bridge across the Medway. I'm just not certain whether trying to do it on the high level bridge works because of the problems of Brenchley Gardens. And when you get across, it narrows down there. So unless you move the Brenchley Gardens wall in, or you extend it over the British Rail, over Network Rail's car park, I'm not sure how we can do it. We can bolt on the main bridge, but how do we do it either end? So I'd like to see at a fairly early stage a feasibility on that, because if we do have problems on trying to actually deliver it, we need to give ourselves time to redirect the money, perhaps more into economic development and pride in place, as some of those initiatives you were saying. But my group will be supporting the overall approach to the budget tonight. Thank you.
Councillor Russell, I now are aware you wish to move an amendment.
Thank you. Yes. We've got one on the revenue and one on the capital. For brevity, I'm going to combine it all into one speech. You can thank me later. First, the context of your budget, the background, if you will. The fair funding review from central government was not as impactful on Maidstone as was first feared. The work by a previous Conservative administration to purchase properties for temporary accommodation and continued has reduced risk in this area, and the rebate from the producer responsibility regulations have all combined to give more breathing room, along with some future risks reduced. Essentially, we have more money. The starting position was a good one. The leader stated in committee that the administration started their budgeting work by looking at reducing council tax. This wasn't taken forward, and I know that we fundamentally differ on our views on this, so I won't dwell on it. I've continually said over the last 2 years that your choices are your choices, and I think I said that tonight as well. We would always seek to reduce tax where possible for all of our residents. As you've heard earlier in the corporate strategy item, there are a number of new initiatives, and yet our budget amendments this evening seek to redress a couple of fundamentals. On the revenue budget, we propose an amendment so that car parking doesn't have to raise this year. We believe that access to fairly costed parking is something that enables rural residents to visit the town centre and for events and businesses to thrive, along with Maidstone residents alike. Let's not forget that most services are located in Maidstone. Residents pay council tax to Maidstone that contribute to these services, and then they have to pay again in order to park to use the services that they've contributed to. Obviously, there needs to be a payment, but it shouldn't be looked on as a continual cash cow. Even rural service centres sometimes have precious little in the way of shops and services. A resident from the largest village in my ward, Marden, has the choice of 2 pubs, a village club, a handful of small shops, no clothes shops, or a supermarket for a weekly shopping site. For many reasons, including work, we have to drive to Maidstone, or do we? Now that there's a small supermarket in Staplehurst and free parking at Eclipse Park or Bluewater, what are we going into Maidstone town centre for? And is the car parking enough to put us off? 2 studies conducted in 2025 found that parking charges are contributing significantly to the death of the high street. The Direct Line Business Insurance research found that 3 in 5 drivers put off visiting their local high street due to parking charges, with half saying they would shop locally more often if parking was cheaper. Similarly, a poll of over 11,000 AA members revealed that the breaking point for the majority of shoppers is when the cost of parking starts to rise above £1 an hour, with nearly half being turned off parking near the high street if it costs more than £5 for 4 to 5 hours. King Street already costs significantly more than this before your rises are proposed. You will have put up car parking on average 30% in 2 years if you do not change course on this tonight. Both of the studies confirm that the British Retail Consortium's report that high streets and shopping centres were hit particularly hard as people veered towards retail parks to take advantage of free parking. We've funded our revenue proposal by taking small amounts from a number of lines, leaving the main item line intact. You'll see that we've removed 2 cabinet members. Our Conservative administration functioned well with 6 members. You made the decision to expand to 8 members when you took control, and I have heard it said in this chamber from 2 cabinet members that they couldn't slip a cigarette paper between their portfolios, and on a separate occasion, one saying he didn't have much to do. Perhaps the leader and/or deputy leader could explain why they feel the continued need to have such a large cabinet if the roles are not clearly defined and members don't feel they have enough work to do. This, after all, is not our money that we spend on things. I understand you would wish to be evenly balanced between the 2 differing political groups, hence the removal of 2 positions, which will provide a continual budget reduction until the unitary is formed. One of the other savings that we've decided to make is to only receive electronic agendas that don't need to be delivered or posted. To be honest, I'm not sure why this hasn't been done before under a Green administration. Some of our agendas are huge. We've chopped down a fair few trees and created a fair few vehicle emissions to deliver them. And posting in the rurals is a nonsense. I received my last agenda pack 2 days after the meeting, and it was then that I decided enough was enough and switched to ModGov Online. Obviously, if there are reasons why people need paper versions, I'm sure this can be accommodated. But fundamentally, this is a waste of natural resources. How can we tell residents to be environmentally friendly when we're not doing it in every way that we can ourselves? It's a practical measure that just makes sense. For our second amendment, in the capital budget, we've removed some money from the corporate property acquisition line, as there'll be no time for Maidstone to spend this money doing any corporate property acquisitions before it becomes a unitary. However, if you did see an opportunity and wanted to attempt to, it still leaves a balance of £6 million for this. We request the reinsertion of £1 million that our previous Conservative administration had in our previous capital budget to start the investigatory and evidence gathering work for the Leeds Langley Relief Road. Residents from the whole of the south of the borough are subjected to daily gridlock as there's simply not another way through Maidstone. Rural lanes are being used as rat runs and people are travelling as far out as Nettlestead and Lenham just to get around the block of traffic in the town centre. There's still a hook in the local plan for the road, and it's more than just a new road, it's another way to get to the motorway networks. Public transport in the south of the borough is poor, and residents in the south are on the whole car dependent. I've heard you say the relief road needs a quantum of housing. This may well be true, but we all know that housing's coming anyway. To pretend anything else is to ignore the will of this Labour central government. There's another potential way. Evidence can be presented to the Department for Transport. An evidence-based outline business case can be prepared, and we could work with KCC to present a local transport funding bid. This is the time to start, not to kick it into the long grass once again. We're not prejudging the outcome of any evidence gathering work. We just think as a housing and a planning authority, it's time to start this work. We need to be ready and have the evidence base to take advantage of any future opportunity that presents itself. The money we've taken out in the capital budget tonight will not affect the other line at all. So your decision on this capital item tonight will show all residents to the south of the borough how you really feel about their needs. Thank you.
Can I just clarify that there are in fact 2 amendments? Yeah. So are they both seconded on both occasions? Both. What we take one amendment at a time then. Each one has a separate vote. Yep. So the first amendment that we will deal with will be the recommendation or amendment on page 1 of these additional papers that starts the recommendations relating to the medium-term financial strategy be approved subject to the following changes affecting recommendation 5. That will be the first amendment, correct? That we now wish to vote on. Sorry? On one amendment. Okay. Do you wish to debate? Right, okay, Councillor English, you were the first to stick your hand up.
I don't want to detain people too long, but however, it has been the tradition that we debate amendments rather than just immediately go into the vote. I'm staggered at the incoherence.
But can I just hold you briefly and allow the seconder?
Oh, sorry, of course.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will speak at the end, but I will only speak once. Thank you.
You're reserving your right to speak at the end.
Yes, but I'll speak at the end of this first amendment.
First amendment,
yeah.
Right. Councillor English.
My apologies, I should have checked with the seconder first before commencing. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The First Amendment is incoherent. On the one hand, we are told that we need to cut parking charges. In effect, that's what we've done. But between 2019 and 2024, we had a freeze on council parking charges, which effectively, given the inflation rate at the time, was a cut. All we have done as an administration is restore the pre-COVID prices that should have applied. We have not been rash about this. We have simply restored the situation, the status quo ante. We are required as a local authority, when we set fees and charges, to have due requirement and notice of making sure that fees and charges cover themselves. In fact, we've done slightly better than estimated because, contrary to the wailings opposite, parking demand has proved extremely robust, and in fact, revenue has been more than predicted. At the same time as we're been told that we should be cutting parking charges in the interests of supporting the town centre, we have a series of proposals that would actually reduce the administration's ambitious plans to support and expand the alternative economy in Maidstone. We know that town centres cannot thrive simply on retail, and we are determined to ensure that Maidstone is a destination for many of the years going forward. And that is what this ambitious budgetary programme and its supporting measures is doing. We are setting out ambitious plans to improve Maidstone. That's why we need 8 cabinet members. The previous Conservative administration had 6. And frankly, apart from a flawed local plan, it is extremely hard to see what that administration delivered. Perhaps it was because they were short-handed. I know personally, in my portfolio, that frankly, I could do with a deputy and assistant I have at County Hall, because the sheer operational weight of intervening successfully to improve Maidstone's refuse service, which their 6-person cabinet had left in a shambolic condition, to improve the state of our parks, and to do much, much more, requires a lot of time. I honestly don't know how cutting cabinet members who are all extremely busy, we've heard about how much work Council of Wales is doing, would help. I conclude by saying that the proposals here are incoherent, and I will address the most incoherently logical of them when we get to the second amendment.
Thank you. You've made a very good point of insulting me now, Clive. Thank you very much. It's the last thing I ever expected you to insult me as a former cabinet member. Thank you very, very much. Councillor Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I just really wanted to come back to the point about, and it's interesting that Clive made the point that in terms of revenue, the existing parking charges are already producing more than was expected. So why put them up? I actually, one of the things that I welcome is the idea of having a scheme that shop owners and businesses in the town centre can apply for funds to make the front of shop look more attractive, to create some curb appeal. But for that to happen, we have to have a vibrant town centre where the shops are not empty, but are active and going on. And actually, as most people would say, when they go into the town centre and come into Maidstone, there is an increasing number of empty shops. The vacancy signs are going up everywhere. In terms of some of the other things that parking, and we have mentioned the situation in parking in Moat Park, for example. One of the other things that you've done, Clive, is you remove the poo bins, which and for the dog owners when they're walking, you're making life a lot more challenging there. I think that the whole, I'm just saying, some of the things that you're doing is, I mean, we started a lot of initiatives which you're carrying through. That's the nature of democracy. You've taken over, but the 1,000 affordable houses was out the Conservative administration. That was not you. And I can mention a few other things as well, but I don't want to get into that. And I think actually the situation with the refuse collection, I think Martin did a superb job before you came in, and you benefited from a lot of his own hard work, Mr. Mayor. So I from this side of the chamber, we appreciate what you did. I do support this amendment simply for the fact that the more we put up car parking charges, the more people are not going to come to the town centre. We need footfall for people to actually come in and use the facilities in the town centre. Same with the leisure centre. Same going to the places like the museum, which I think we did. The leisure centre, which we did. So let's keep the charges as they are. We can live with that. In fact, there's the alternatives are there. If you don't want to do change your cabinet members because you're overworked, then I'm really sorry. But that's fine. You're that's what you get paid for.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you.
Councillor Ford-Cast.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I would encourage colleagues on the other side to support both our amendments, particularly the car parking charges. Councillor English, you mentioned about demand withstanding, which is obviously welcome news, but there is only so far you can push people and keep putting costs up before they have had enough. Finally done. At a time where households are struggling and when town centres, businesses are fighting for their lives, you've seen Claire's go, I've seen Shoe go today, I noticed. It's a poor choice. It's a wrong choice to make it more expensive for people to come here into our town centre. And I'm afraid I don't think it's a pragmatic decision. I don't think it's a restoring to pre-inflation decision. I think it's a completely and utterly ideological decision to discourage car use by making it more expensive. Now, that's fine. You guys won the election. That's great. But this does have real life, actual differences and a bad adverse impact on people. I can't see how we can increase council tax, increase parking charges and increase welfare and spend 7.7 million on decarbonise a building that's worth half and say to people, that, oh, this is great, just keep putting more into our coffers. It's just not right. So I would encourage you to support the both our amendments, particularly car parking. Thank you.
So, Councillor Barwick.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one point. I get extremely aggravated when I see things like stop printing copies for members' agenda, or sorry, stop printing members' agenda. I'm severely dyslexic, which I've made known. I don't have a problem with people knowing that. And that makes me feel discriminated against. I know the councillor said about people, there would be accommodation by people, but the social model says you shouldn't disadvantage people. People can opt out of receiving paper copies. I need them as a reasonable adjustment. Thank you.
Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you. Deja vu. I'm sure we had similar amendments last year. Councillor Russell, you talked about you wanting to reduce tax for residents. Well, you didn't support our council tax reduction scheme. Similarly, Councillor Forecast, your households are struggling. Well, you should have supported our council tax reduction scheme. You voted against it. The car parks are full. I don't use them as much as other people, but they are full. We have this principle of charging for use for non-statutory services. As Councillor English has said, this is a return to, in real terms, to pre-COVID levels. Drivers have been subsidised by this council, and that's been at the detriment of other services and investments. I note the savings here are sort of focused around the town centre. You make a big play of rural versus town, and yet you're wanting to cut the funding for the town. Final point, poo bins in. I'm not sure that was relevant to the amendment. I couldn't see. People can, they're not heavy. They can carry them to the bigger wheelie bins further around. But it's not relevant to this amendment. I do urge members to vote against it, obviously.
Councillor Harper.
Thank you, Chair. I do have some sympathies with the argument about reducing car parking charges, but in discussion with my colleagues, we can't support the amendment because the way you're trying to fund it, we feel is detrimental. To reduce the revenue support for investment in town centre assets, well, the big town centre assets we've got are where we're sitting in this listed building here and Maidstone Museum. And we've seen the problems which have only just been fixed with our lift here. And the whole problem, over the years, the problem of lack of investment and looking after both this building and the museum and others that comes and hits us on, periodically. So to actually reduce it would not be a good idea. And then the item in terms of creative and leisure provision, I'm afraid, it's one of the things I've worked for years on this council. When we've been a hung council, when I was chair of the relevant committee, we brought in the arts officer, which I'm pleased to see was being continued when the Conservatives took over and now by the current administration. But to actually cut our arts provision, and even though we've tried to provide a reasonable level, we're still really underfunded on arts and culture in this borough compared to most urban areas of our site. So the idea of cutting it, I just think is appalling. My colleague over there has mentioned the issue around printing agendas, the cabinet thing. Well, I don't think the administration's likely to reduce themselves by 2, unless we're all supposed to decide tonight which of the ones is to go. I'd take up one point with Clive, though. You do need to remember that the refuse contract, which is now in place, was unanimously supported by all the political parties on this council. It was voted for by the Liberal Democrats, by the Green Party, by the Conservative, sorry, not the Green Party, you weren't there, by the Labour Party, by the Conservatives, Liberal Democrats and the Independents, in fact, and Oakwood Independents. We all supported that contract. Yes, it had a bumpy start, but it is not fair to blame that on the previous administration. You may blame various things on them, but I don't think the refuse contract we've got is one you should blame them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harper. Councillor Cleater, I believe, is last.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to associate myself with Councillor Barwick's comments because I actually don't do very well. And as she pointed out, if you're asking people with disabilities to opt in and request, then that is discriminatory. If you all want to opt in for electronic, that's absolutely fine. But there are those of us who struggle with our eyesight that actually need it on paper. I've struggled this week because actually I didn't get my papers. I had to come in and collect them yesterday. On car parking, actually, if you look in the papers and you look at who they're complaining about, they are not Maidstone Borough car parks, it's the mall and it is the Fremlin's Walk. So checking the prices, we are cheaper than either of those, and we don't have an inordinate number of car parking spaces within Maidstone itself. So if you want to go and campaign at the mall and you want to go and campaign at Fremlin's Walk, please feel free to do so. I don't like Mike Ashley, and you know, he's not one to come away with not banking money out of people. And he owns Fremlin's Walk now, his company does, then please do. But if we're going to look at it, the car parks are full. We struggle to go and park. Some of us, because of our disabilities, have to use the cars, even if we don't live out in the villages. And I think if we're going to have a look at amendments, taking money from arts, I think, which we had a debate about creativity and that and what we need to do. Well, actually, for the very people who have disabilities and do struggle with engaging, that is usually their first port of call to get back into work, into education, into productive activity. So on the one hand, we can moan all we want about benefits, about council tax reduction, and then you don't want to fund things that actually in the creative arts are very inclusive, especially for our young people, and getting them involved. So I will not be voting for the amendments as they stand, but I will say, and I agree with Councillor Harper, I know Councillor Parfitt, we did work, all of us, on the 1,000 affordable houses, and yes, we all voted for that Suez contract that were on the council then. So for me, collaboratively, we'll work, as I've always said, where we agree, we'll vote with you. Where we don't on things, we won't. But we will also continue to work collaboratively. And the one thing we need to do, as highlighted by Councillor Russell and others, is get those 1,000 affordable homes built. That is a commitment from all of us. That is what the local people want. If you read anything online, it's about housing. And just a shout out to Lewisham, because I haven't had a shout out.
I'm going to have to call it to an end. Sorry, Maureen.
Yeah.
I now ask Councillor Parfitt if she wishes to take up her right.
There's probably not much point, but I will anyway. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We are bringing this forward because we believe strongly and consistently that affordable and accessible parking is fundamental to Maidstone town centre. This is not a new position for us, as I'm sure you all know. It is a principle we have held as a group throughout. We must start with an honest assessment of who we are as a borough and the reality of our geography. Maidstone is not a major city with an underground network or comprehensive late-night public transport. A very significant proportion of our borough is rural. Many residents live in villages and outlying communities where the car is not optional, it is essential. If we want those residents to come into the town centre to shop, to use our services, to meet friends, to support our restaurants and independent retailers, then parking must remain affordable. Increasing charges may appear an easy win on paper, but for families already struggling and watching every pound, it makes another reason to stay away or go elsewhere. This amendment recognises that reality. It also recognises that we are moving quickly towards local government reorganisation. In that context, it is entirely reasonable to reassess some of the proposed revenue growth items. The amendment reduces allocation for town centre assets, bidding initiatives and creative provision, not because they lack value, but because they are already other lines within the budget supporting these objectives. Parking itself directly supports football, which in turn supports business improvement and cultural activity. We are also proposing sensible efficiencies. Reducing printed member agendas in favour of electronic distribution is modern and cost effective, and no one would suggest that accommodation shouldn't or wouldn't be made for those whom electric is not an option. Adjusting the elections line to reflect recent expenditure is again evidence-based adjustment. Renewing the number of cabinet members also makes sound financial sense. How can it be that more than 1/3 of the leading coalition are in leadership roles? It is also most important to note that this amendment has no net impact on the overall budget on council tax for 26-27. It is about slightly adjusting the priorities to reflect the needs of the whole borough, not just those of the town centre. At a time when both residents and businesses face ongoing pressures, holding parking charges at their current level send a clear signal to both residents and businesses. We understand our borough, we understand our rural communities, and we are prepared to make choices that keep our town centre accessible and alive. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll call upon Councillor Russell to close.
Thanks. With brevity, lots of points. I just really wanted to pick up on the sort of line that we went down for the disability. That's absolutely not what I said. I said if you needed the paper copies would be provided. I was just saying for people that are able to, you can have them on screen. And in fact, if you're a KCC member, that's how you get all of your papers. There are no printed papers in KCC. Everything is on screen. And there are different programs that you can use. My daughter uses a lot of them to actually read out the papers for you rather than reading them on screen. So I really actually am annoyed that we went down that route because that is not what I said. But other than that, we just move to the vote. Thank you.
Right, I'm going to move to the vote on this first amendment. Officers are primed.
Mr. Mayor. So if I can just make it absolutely clear, we're talking about the amendment on your additional papers. The recommendation, the amendment that we're considering first is on page 1 and 2. And the briefing, which explains the consequence of the amendment, is on pages 3 to 28. Okay, so if you could indicate whether you're voting for, against, or you're abstaining. We'll start with Councillor Barwick. Against. Councillor Burke.
For.
Councillor Cannon.
For.
Councillor Cannon.
For.
Sorry, I didn't hear you. Councillor Clark.
Against.
Councillor Cleater.
Against.
Councillor Coates. Councillor Conyard.
Against.
Councillor Cook.
For.
Councillor Cooch.
Against.
Councillor Dawes.
Abstain.
Councillor English.
Against.
Councillor Field.
Against.
Councillor Forecast. Councillor Fort.
For.
Councillor Gooch.
Against.
Councillor Greenan.
Against.
Councillor Harper.
Against.
Councillor Harwood.
Against.
Councillor Jeffrey.
Against.
Councillor Jenkins Baldock.
Against.
Councillor Jones.
Against.
Councillor Cadker.
Against.
Councillor Mackay.
Against.
Councillor Millam.
Against.
Councillor David Nagy.
Against.
Councillor Mark Nagy.
Against.
And Councillor Parfitt.
For.
For.
Councillor Povey.
For.
Councillor Reardon.
For.
Councillor Rodwell.
Against.
Councillor Round.
For.
Councillor Russell.
For.
Councillor Spooner.
For.
Councillor Summerskill.
Against.
Councillor Sweetman.
Against.
Councillor Mike Thompson.
Against.
Councillor Stephen Thompson.
Against.
Councillor Wales.
Against.
Councillor Wilby.
Against.
Councillor Dan Wilkinson.
Against.
And Councillor Joe Wilkinson.
Against.
Thank you.
Give officers a moment to tally up.
So members, that amendment was lost. The votes for were 12, against 29, and there was 1 abstention. Thank you.
Right, same process. Next amendment, Councillor Russell.
I wrapped it up in the first one, so no need to speak again. Thank you.
Councillor Parfitt. But reserving your right.
Reserve my right at the end, yeah.
And Councillor Parfitt.
Said I'm not going to speak again, but
Those wishing to speak, Councillor English.
It's an interesting amendment, this one. Reducing our potential investment in corporate acquisitions is a strange one. Seems to reduce the council's flexibility going forward. So I'm not quite sure of the value of that, especially as most of those acquisitions are actually undertaken to increase the council's revenue income. However, I'll set that aside. The main thrust of this amendment is about the much vexed Leeds Langley Relief Road, which is not much of a relief road, but I shall leave it where it is. £1 million is very hard figure to substantiate in terms of the projected work. And it's quite hard to see the logical reasoning for this, given that it's quite hard to see how it could move forward without the support of the current highway authority, Kent County Council, which does not have this in its local transport plan. So given it isn't in the local transport plan, it's a little difficult to see how that would proceed. I would say, going back to Kent County Council, given that they have spent most of them £14.5 million they received in mitigation for housing allocations in Maidstone, either outside the borough or on a vast number of feasibility studies that have gone nowhere whatsoever. But I would think that if we were going to spend up to £1 million on doing the county council's highway work for them, we would actually be better to spend that money on actual pragmatic on-the-ground solutions to highway problems that we know exist, rather than yet another feasibility study. So I have had it up to here really with feasibility studies of one kind or another. That's not new. When I first got elected to the council, we're looking at a public park behind Trinity. And I was asked to support the 9th feasibility consultation on it. My residents told me just get on and actually spend some money on doing something constructive. We have a lot of proposals that could move forward. We have a lot of proposals that have been blocked because the county council simply hasn't bid for any money under the seal scheme. Yet again this year we've had that situation. So I would like to see us actually, if we cannot get the county council to bid for proposals going forward, to actually consider any expenditure we wanted to divert from the general budget into highways being spent on something productive, like the Coombe Farm Estate 20-mile-an-hour scheme, which we know we could deliver for a fraction of the cost and will actually help some people, or finishing off some of the works on the Lewes Road corridor. So I don't think this addresses the issue, although I do agree that the south of Maidstone does need serious attention. I just think there are better
Thank you, Councillor English.
Yes, just better things in this current year to spend that sort of money on.
Councillor Harwood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll commend members to the pack that we were given. On pages 30 and 31, they set out the story, if you like, around the Leeds Langley bypass historically. And what I find quite puzzling about this proposed amendment is the figure is £1 million, but the entire local plan process is forecast to cost £1.5 million. So as a percentage, it's a huge amount of money, particularly when we're not the highway authority. And what I would further add is that we know that an aspiration for a bypass was within the local transport plan 4. However, a lot of modelling work was undertaken and it showed some very significant impacts in terms of traffic flows on surrounding roads, because trip generation was not going to the motorway, because once you went on the motorway, what you meant to do, you have to come off it again. And if anyone thinks that junction 5 or junction 6 or junction 7 is a party, it was very problematic. But it also added a lot of traffic to local roads because the quantum of enabling development was so high, because the scheme would not attract government funding. And actually, when you look at that, the government funding position has become even more hostile. We've moved from predict and provide to monitor and manage, as we well know, and the National Planning Policy Framework is entirely changed on such new schemes. And the capacity we did have at Junction 8 has got something called Lenham Heathlands now linking into it, which has changed the equation on that area. However, as again, the really good officer note on pages 30 and 31 states, we do have a reference within the local plan review that we need to look at this issue around, is there a requirement for any additional kind of road or minimal bypass or whatever in that area, but that must be done in the right order, because at the end of this spring, we're going to be having a call for sites where a huge volume of housing is got to be allocated across our borough. And we need to be on the front foot on that, because we're going in potentially to a merger with local authorities, which are virtually all national landscape or metropolitan green belt. So we're really going to be under the cosh. So if we're going to put a lot of housing in Leeds, if we're going to put thousands of houses in Langley, if we're going to put thousands of houses in Caring, if we're going to put them in Otham, then we will need to think about a scheme. But we cannot second guess that, and we cannot allocate so much money. Let's do this in the appropriate process, and we will get there. But somehow we've got to work out where this massive housing growth is going to go and how people get to and from them. And I think that's the point where we can think about overall transportation issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Summerskill.
Thank you. In my engineering background, the figure, the quantum is what really puzzles me with this. It's not a kind of figure that I would have seen in advising developers to look at something. I think something much smaller would be adequate. But being from the southern side as well of Maidstone, I would point out in page 30, the reference within the local plan review, that it's a policy requirement to explore the funding and delivery of a Lees Langley Relief Road. And there would be legitimate questions at examination in public if it were not undertaken. And I think we must bear that in mind. But I agree with the timing is the concern here. And for me, the quantum is also quite unbelievable. Thank you.
Councillor Mackay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I live between Willington Street and the proposed Lees Langley bypass. And when I was first elected, I campaigned to support the Lees Langley bypass. But then it was pointed out to me that building roads, what comes with it is building houses. Now, I have the pleasure of driving along that road where the Lees Langley bypass was, and it is one of the most beautiful parts of Maidstone. How anyone could consider building, I presume, 4 lanes, even if it was 2 lanes. In addition, I presume, to what's already there, is outrageous. Now, I have to deal with Willington Street. I'll get over it. You know, you leave early or you leave later. But the Lees Langley is a cheap trick to hang your hat on. It will never happen, in my opinion. And it would be a criminal if it were. It's a waste of money to even look at it. Or if you are looking at it, drive along the current road with your eyes open. So maybe drive along it as a passenger. It is beautiful. It is beautiful. I rest.
Councillor Harp.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Picking up a point Maureen said earlier, I believe in judging all proposals on their own merit. And as I've proved over the years here, sometimes I vote for things and sometimes I don't. But on this one, I'm inclined to support it because we do have big traffic problems around Maidstone. Clearly on the east side of Maidstone, potentially Lees Langley corridor may alleviate some of the current problems. On my side of town, on the west of town, we need at some point to think about something to alleviate the problems we suffer with Hermitage Lane, because access to our hospital in Maidstone frequently isn't there. And you see ambulances stuck at the Fountain Junction and so on because they can't get around. So this is a massive problem we've got. Only on Monday, I walked the Len Valley Walk from Lenham all the way through to Moat Park and the Archbishop's Palace. And I actually walked through at lunchtime through Leeds Village. And the amount of traffic I saw trundling through Leeds Village on a very narrow country lane, and twisty when it's going through the village, I was appalled at. It reminded me of Hermitage Lane in the rush hour, and this was lunchtime on a Monday. Then later on that walk, I went across Willington Street. Again, you know, not in the rush hour, but, you know, I waited, you know, about 10 minutes, about 5 minutes to get across there. Those roads are beyond capacity. And if this will potentially, it's in the local plan, sorry, it's been pointed out, it's in the local plan. So we need to actually come to a view one way or another as to whether it's worth pursuing. And if we need to spend some money to actually get the highway support and the technical knowledge, then I think we do. I will remind people, and a lot of you weren't here before, when we did one of our previous local plans as a council, we did employ transport consultants. And I can't remember if it was when we were a Conservative council or the Hung council. We've done too many local plans while I've been, but we've used experts to advise us on these types of policies. So I don't see a problem with using experts to give us the advice one way or another. And if ultimately it shows it's not a feasible scheme, then we can remove it from the local plan. But while it's there, I think it's important to really get to the bottom of the issue. Thank you.
Councillor Cook.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. I shall be quick. I've been campaigning for a relief road, knocking on even Malcolm's door from time to time in days gone past. I didn't even get a cup of tea. So, yeah, Maureen, you would have done. The facts are quite simple. If we go back in time, yes, once upon a time, all of Shepway was farmland. So was Park Wood. Lot big areas of Bolton, Monchelsea. So we've lost lots of farmland, and we have huge housing estates in parts of the borough. Now, in recent years, we've seen huge developments along the Sutton Road. We've seen huge developments along in other parts of Maidstone South East. Now, a new road was not there to generate the additional traffic, but housing was. Had we got our act together at the right time, and Councillor Harwood is right about timing, we should have done this 20 years ago, because all of those houses in Langley Park, along the Sutton Road, on the other side, all of those houses should have been contributing to a relief road in those days, which would have cost 40–50 million pounds at the most, and that would have been doable. This shouldn't be a question of, oh well, we can't do it, and timing and the problem it's going to create in other parts. There is a problem, and frankly, tinkering with it in the way that some members want to, with junction improvements and the like, is not going to solve the huge problems of congestion that parts of the borough are suffering from. We need to be more strategic, and new infrastructure is what's needed. Now, I'm not saying let's put all our eggs into the basket of a relief road. I am saying that we would be doing our job properly on behalf of our residents to have a proper look at this in a way that we haven't yet done. So I fully support the idea of spending this money, because that's what wisdom suggests we should do. And I hope that we're not going to get this anti-car thing, anti-more road. Let's do something for the residents. Frankly, I think this has got a lot of residential support. So I do urge support for this amendment. Thank you.
And the final speaker I have is Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to give some caution about how difficult it is to spend money on road schemes from a borough's perspective, because Langley, we had 3 big schemes, biggest quantum of housing in the last local plan. The KCC negotiated a complete reconfiguration of Willington Street at Sutton Road. At the moment, KCC is now saying that's not going forward, and they're saying that there's several million, almost £4 million on the, I think 2.44 million was for that junction, 2.99 million was for the Sutton Road works. But the thing is, we go ahead and we go through the planning process, we collect money for traffic mitigation, that money goes over to KCC, and if you look at the latest JTB report, you'll see that KCC takes the decision at ENT and at the cabinet level to not move forward with these schemes. And the latest report says that that money is now, the Section 106 that we collected from the 3 big developments in Langley is now at risk of timeout. It actually says that in the report, the latest report from KCC. So we collected all that money. We did what was intended. KCC said, if you build there, you need to spend the money on this junction. So we played the game, collected the money, handed it over, and it's not being delivered. The problem is that KCC can deliver roads strategically because they can work with the government, they can work with at a higher level to see what are the strategic infrastructure plans for Kent. But we can't. We can only really deliver a road with housing. So if you want to have a road through Leeds Langley, through the borough this is, you really do have to expect tens of thousands of houses in that area because that's the way the borough delivers roads. It comes on the back of mitigating housing. So I just want you to look at the sort of 14.9, 15 million pounds that we collected for our local plan mitigation. Most of that has not been delivered. We collected it, the wheat sheaf. It's now a due minimum scheme. There's a little bit of lining that's going to happen there with Crow's Cranbourne Avenue. We paid 4.2 million for a pub that's never going to be demolished. So look at £1 million on this paper and say, how can we as a borough actually spend that money? How can we do that? Look at what we collected to this point with the local plan and just think about how successful we have been as a borough to get that delivered. And I rest my case on that.
Right, that is all the questions. I hand back over to those that seconded and proposed. Does the seconder wish to respond?
I'll let Claudine discuss that.
I now ask the proposer then to finalise.
Thank you, and thank you everyone for your points. One thing is 100% certain, if we don't try, nothing will change. And we've all got things in our wards where people say, you can't do that, that can't be done. Computer says no. But I know all of you as individual ward councillors still try. And I think with this as the borough, we should still try. Going back to the planning inspector removed the Leeds Langley safeguarding area because we didn't have enough evidence. We need to build the evidence. That's what this is for. It's not for the actual road. It's never going to be enough money for the road. It's the evidence to start the work, and we're not prejudging the outcome of that. I agree it could be wrapped up in the local plan process, but we haven't even started that yet. We've had one meeting. We're quite far behind. Going to Councillor Clark's point, like I said, we're not building the road. We're just starting the work on that. And I think actually with some of the KCC schemes, if you actually look into the detail of that, there was MBC councillor involvement where people went, I don't want to lose those cherry trees. I don't want to lose that patch of grass. So don't forget that that is all wrapped up in some of that. And on the point of the money, we've taken £1 million out of a £7 million budget. There's £6 million left for property acquisition. And even Councillor English can't spend £6 million in 7 months. Thank you.
Right, well, officers are primed for yet another vote.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we're now voting on the amendment that is set out on page 29 of your additional pack with the briefing information starting at page 30. So again, if you could indicate, please, whether you are for, against, or you are abstaining. I'm sorry, this is a long night, but we do have to do named votes. So, Councillor Barwick. Against. Councillor Burke.
For.
Councillor Cannon.
For.
Councillor Clark.
Against.
Councillor Cleater.
Against.
Councillor Coates. For. Councillor Conyard.
Against.
Councillor Cook.
For.
Councillor Cooch.
Against.
Councillor Dawes. For. Councillor English.
Against.
Councillor Field.
Against.
Councillor Forecast. Councillor Fort.
For.
Councillor Gooch.
For.
Councillor Greenan,
Against.
Councillor Harper,
For.
Councillor Harwood,
Against.
Councillor Jeffrey,
Against.
Councillor Jenkins Baldock. Against. Councillor Jones,
Against.
Councillor Cadker,
Against.
Councillor Mackay,
Against.
Councillor Millam,
Against.
Councillor David Nagy,
Against.
Councillor Mark Nagy,
Against.
Councillor Parfitt,
For.
Councillor Perry,
For.
For.
Councillor Reardon,
For.
Councillor Rodwell,
Against.
For.
Councillor Russell, for Councillor Spooner,
For.
Councillor Summerskill,
Abstain.
Councillor Sweetman,
Against.
Councillor Mike Thompson,
Against.
Councillor Stephen Thompson,
Against.
Councillor Wales,
Against.
Councillor Wilby,
Abstain.
Councillor Dan Wilkinson,
Against.
and Councillor Joe Wilkinson.
Against.
Thank you.
Well, on the basis of that, let's have the tally.
Thank you, members. So the voting was 16 for, 24 against, and 2 abstentions, which means that the amendment falls.
On the basis that the amendments have been lost, then there will now be a debate and recorded vote on the original motion. So, the appetite for speaking, please. You're waiving your rights. So, do you all want to wish to move to the vote?
I think we can move to the vote as far as I'm concerned.
Jeffrey, you want to vote, sum up?
Yeah, just a quick thing, just to quickly say, I said 19 points, and if you turn the page, there's the 20th. So we're actually voting on 20 individual points within the motion. I just wanted to clarify that, but very happy to not clarify anything else.
Right, back to the offices again.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And so just to be absolutely clear, there are 20 recommendations set out over 3 pages, 181 to 183. And if you could tell me, please, whether you are voting for, against, or abstaining. Councillor Barwick.
For all of them.
Councillor Burke.
Against.
Councillor Cannon.
Against.
Councillor Clark.
For.
Councillor Cleater.
For.
Councillor Coates. Councillor Conyard.
For.
Councillor Cook.
Against.
Councillor Cooch. For. Councillor Dawes.
For.
Councillor English. Councillor Field.
For.
Councillor Forecast. Councillor Fort.
Against.
Councillor Gooch.
For. For.
Councillor Harper.
24s.
That's 4 then. Okay. Councillor Harwood,
4.
Councillor Jeffrey,
4.
Councillor Jenkins Baldock. 4. Councillor Jones,
4.
Councillor Cadker,
4. 4.
Councillor Millen, 4. Councillor David Nagy,
4.
Councillor Mark Nagy,
4.
Councillor Parfitt. Against. Councillor Perry,
Against.
Councillor Povey,
Against.
Councillor Reardon,
Against.
Councillor Rodwell. 4. Councillor Round,
Against.
Councillor Russell. Against. Councillor Spooner,
Against.
Councillor Summerskill,
4.
Councillor Sweetman,
4.
Councillor Mike Thompson,
4.
Councillor Wales,
4.
Councillor Wilby,
4.
Councillor Dan Wilkinson,
4.
Councillor Joe Wilkinson.
4.
Thank you very much. Please don't damage the infrastructure.
And the tally is?
So members, all 20 of the recommendations are carried with votes for 30 and against 12 and no abstentions. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, officers and indeed members for that. I'm now going to move over to agenda 19. And I call on the Director of Strategy, Insight and Governance to submit the report to Council.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I commend the report to Council.
I now seek the leader to propose.
Switch on. Yeah, I propose. I'm assuming we don't want a name vote. Is that reasonable? No. Good. Okay. So I move the recommendations on page 319.
And do I have a seconder? Councillor English, do you have the right? Does anyone else wish to speak? No, apparently not. Is the motion agreed? Right, now move on to more happier times. When I quit. Agenda 20, appointment of Mayor Select 2026-27. In accordance with the agreed protocol on Mayor and Deputy Mayor pre-selection, other than in exceptional circumstances, the Mayor should first have held the post of Deputy Mayor in the year preceding the mayoral election. The Deputy Mayor is Councillor Brian Clark. I now ask Councillor Wilby to move.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Fellow councillors, it's my honour tonight to support that Councillor Brian Eugene Clark be appointed Mayor Select for the municipal year 2026-27. Being a councillor is it's about showing up day after day, integrity and commitment, and genuine desire to make life better for the people we represent. Brian embodies this completely. Throughout his time on the council, Brian has demonstrated a steady and thoughtful approach to being a councillor. He listens, he works with others across all parties. He never loses sight of the fact that every decision we make affects the people, real communities, and long-term well-being of our borough. Brian has been a constant advocate for planning, environmental stewardship, and community engagement. He understands that Mason's future depends on balancing growth, sustainability, ambition with realism, and progresses with protection of places that residents cherish. His work has always reflected in his belief that local voices matter and are not an afterthought. what Brian sets apart is not only his experience that he brings to the as a councillor, but his character. He brings calm where there's tension, clarity where there's confusion, and fairness where there's disagreement. He's the kind of councillor that does the hard work quietly, diligently, without seeking the spotlight. It's a great privilege to work with you, Brian, over the years, and it's more of an honour to call you a friend. Thank you.
Councillor Gooch to second.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have to admit, I really did need to fall asleep because it's 9:20 and we're all tired and we want to go home. But I do think that what's just been said, thank you, what the words that rang there was that, Brian, you bring clarity when there is confusion. And I have to say, you spoke very well tonight, even though you're deputy mayor. Make the most of it, because I don't think you'll be able to express such opinions when the big day comes. But in all seriousness, I really, on behalf of my independent colleagues here, we do wish you well. It's an excellent choice. I know you've had a really good innings as a deputy, and you will make a great mayor, and all the very best to you, and I so support. Thank you.
I now ask Councillor Perry.
Well, Councillor Clark, it gives me great pleasure actually to support you to be the new mayor. You've been deputy mayor for a year, and that's a very useful thing to do. I didn't have that privilege when I became mayor, but it probably showed in what I did. But anyway, you're hugely experienced as a councillor, both at county and borough level. And the thing, when I was mayor, the thing I loved about our borough was its diversity and its inclusiveness. This is something, it touched me as the mayor, and I'm sure as the first citizen of our wonderful borough, you would carry on and do the same and support that. Because I think it's something we're all very, very proud of, and I'm sure you'll do a great job. And I wish you all the very best. Thank you.
Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you. I'll keep this very brief and we'll save the big speech for May. Everything everyone said already, absolutely, fully agree. Brian, you'll be great. And you can look forward to that promotion from second citizen to first citizen. Whoa. And on behalf of the Green Independent Group, we support that.
Councillor Cleater.
Thank you. On behalf of the Labour Group, we are happy to support Brian Eugene Clark. I'll use your full name for once. Oh, well, I can be as well, you know what I mean. I'm very good at telling people off, so ask my kids. However, as someone who has suffered alongside you, as has Councillor Wilkinson and that on the Joint Transportation Board, I wish you well. We all were involved in the monumental decision to close Cranbourne Avenue, which seems to be the only thing KCC did as part of that huge amount of money they got off us. But you've worked hard and diligently, and I know you've been a support to Martin when he's required it. And he's done a great job as mayor as well, by the way. But we wish you well in the future. I'm taking it you won't be going to Joint Transportation Board. So you've won one bonus there, because that really is like banging your head on a brick wall, to be quite honest. Anyone who's ever been on Joint Transportation, it is the committee that is the most frustrating ever. But we wish you well. We look forward to seeing what you're going to be up to in your mayoral year, and obviously whatever fundraising you will be doing, we will be happy to support. So thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Councillor Povey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On behalf of my fellow Reform councillors and myself, we fully support this proposition. We've not known you very long, obviously, clearly, we only came in October. And I think during debate, there's not very much you said that we've actually agreed with, but that's not the point that's relevant. The key point is we were all born with two ears and one mouth, and sometimes you learn more if you tend to use them in that proportion. And I've certainly learnt a lot from the things you have brought out in meetings. You've got very big boots to fill. In the short time we've been here, it's very difficult when you come in as new members as a by-election, and the current mayor has helped us on a couple of occasions in the corridor and via emails, and I'm sure you will continue to fill those books to the best of your capacity. So we do support it and wish you a very happy year. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations? I have to ask that question. If not, is the motion agreed? Agenda 21 lists the appointment of the Deputy Mayor 2026-27. And in accordance with the agreed protocol on Mayor and Deputy Mayor pre-selection, the most senior member of the Council, as set in the order of seniority by length of service, is... Yes, you waited for it. By service members who have not previously held the office of Mayor, who wish to take up that office, and who have served for a minimum of 6 years, should be appointed to the position of Deputy Mayor. And that person is Councillor Dennis Spooner. I firstly ask Councillor Russell to move the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I understand that in High Wycombe, they still retain the custom of weighing the mayor at the start and at the end of their year in office. I don't know whether we could extend, I don't think that extends to the deputy mayor, though. Dennis will be relieved to find out. And the town crier announces the results. Anyway, it's not usually me that spouts off about history, so I'll return to Dennis. Dennis had a professional career in planning, starting as a planner for KCC, moving to private practice, and then joining the civil service, working to advise ministers on local plans and planning policy. He first became a parish councillor in 2011 and then a borough councillor in 2017. His expertise in planning has been invaluable. His experience and knowledge of local government has made him an excellent councillor, and his easygoing manner and willingness to help will make him an excellent deputy mayor. Let's just say that is his plan, and we will weigh in at the end to see how he fared. I therefore propose that Councillor Dennis Charles Spooner be appointed as Deputy Mayor Select for the municipal year 26-27. I wish him all the best, and Val will do the long speech in May.
Right, Councillor English.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. We always say nice things about mayor-elects and deputy mayor-elects at this time of year, but I do have some things to say about Councillor Spooner, but I shall save those to the annual meeting of the council when we have more time. All I would say at this time is it is a pleasure for me personally to support the nomination of Dennis Spooner as Deputy Mayor of the Borough of Maidstone. We, all of us in different ways, do contribute to the community. Dennis has contributed to the community across the borough in his various roles with planning and elsewhere, but specifically to the community of Bearsted, where we both have the honour of being parish councillors. In fact, he got me into it to sort out some particularly nasty local difficulties. Working with Dennis in a non-political environment like a parish council has been refreshing in all sorts of ways, and I have enjoyed it immensely. I believe that in a non-political but high-profile role as Deputy Mayor, and then if timetable goes according to plan, the last Mayor of the Borough of Maidstone as it currently exists, he will be an excellent representative of the people of this borough and the businesses within the borough. And it will give me great pleasure to expand on that point at the annual meeting of the council. For the moment, I'm really just glad you're putting your name forward, Dennis. Good luck.
Thank you, Councillor English. Councillor Summerskill.
Thank you. I'm very happy to give the Green Party support to Dennis or Councillor Spooner. for those of you who don't know, and we actually go back quite a distance to when he was, even before he was an independent councillor and before he then changed colour, which was at one of our Christmas lunches, I remember. Anyway, 2003, our middle child brought his middle child back to my eldest child's 18th birthday party. I remember. And we now share 2 grandchildren. So I have known Dennis a bit longer than I've been, or he's been on the council, and I'm happy to support him for this role.
Councillor Cleater.
It's actually a great pleasure on behalf of the Labour group to support Dennis's nomination. Anyone who can put up with me in planning committee deserves a medal. Well, that's true. That is true. That's true. I'll see you outside in a minute. But Dennis, your knowledge to someone who is a newbie is actually really invaluable and helpful. And although I can never join you in alcohol, I do enjoy sometimes when we go over to Spoons after a particularly difficult committee to drown our sorrows, me in a Diet Coke, you guys in whatever real ale, your companion there, Councillor English, being another aficionado, and Dan trying to still rein me in because he loves planning. I'm just taking one for the team. And Dennis, just thank you so much for all your help and support. And for you in your deputy year, I just wish you well. And you can buy me a drink next time we all end up in Spoons, but it won't be tonight because it's getting late.
Councillor Mrs. Gooch.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Dennis, have you got over it yet? I know how surprised you were, but you must have been so thrilled when it was suddenly forced upon you. Shocked, yes, I know. On behalf of the independent group, we're delighted for you. I think you'll be a great mayor. I can just see it all before me. We wish you all the very best and good luck in May when the big speeches get rolled out. Oy vey. All the best. Oh, we fully support you, obviously. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And finally, Councillor Povey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Likewise, it gives me great pleasure to support this on behalf of my fellow Reform councillors. Well done, Dennis. I've not known you very long, but you do serve on one of the committees I sit on. And I think when you're new to the chamber, you never know who your friends are going to be. And what I have found is if you put the politics aside, people here are actually very accommodating and very helpful towards new councillors. And I must say that comes from both sides of the chamber. Councillors sitting opposite. There's one or two that have been particularly helpful and always been prepared to give a word of advice, and you are no different. I'm sure you're going to have a great year. We wish you all the best, and may it certainly lead to higher office. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, is that motion agreed? Right. Can now declare the meeting closed.